Hello all, Alison here. Welcome back to Words and Pictures for a special storytelling episode of Books. I'm going to be telling you some of the stories emerging in the pages of this hand-stitched book that I've just recently created, and I wanted to share them with you here in a video because that seemed like the best way to tell you the stories. Newer followers may not even know about the series Books, which covers all my book-related art, I suppose. There are handmade books, altered books, also flip-throughs of art journals in various stages of completion. So do check out the Books playlist if you haven't seen it. We've recently been doing tag time rather than books, but with this handmade book on the table, I wanted to dive on with another episode for that series. I will link to the books down below. What I will also link to is the post on the PaperArtsy blog that covers all the how-to details of this particular handmade book. You may also recognise some of the panels on the pages because we did create some of those in a previous episode, so I'll link to that too. So lots of links for you to follow up in the description below the video. In any case, the challenge for this PaperArtsy blog post was to use stamps by two different PaperArtsy designers. Now, one of the designers that I've used is me. So I've got lots of my botanicals on the table, particularly the three new spring sets, but also a couple of others are part of the mix. I've also been using some of my tissue paper. And the other designer whose stamps I deployed in this book is France Papillon, who is one of the PaperArtsy signature designers. She has a whole range of different kinds of stamps, some sketchy, some quirky, but the three that I chose to work with for this are these wonderful ones that are based on vintage book illustrations. And because obviously my springtime stamps particularly, but all my stamps are kind of inspired by vintage book pages, and text and script are such a huge part for me. These seemed like, combined with the botanicals, they might have some stories to tell. And yes, they do. So the PaperArtsy blog post really covers the how of the book, but it seemed to me that the best way to deal with the stories that emerged as I was creating was to come and share those as a video here. So yeah, follow all those links down below. They'll tell you all kinds of things you need to know about products and how to and so on and so forth. But for today, it's going to be about turning the pages and talking a little bit about how the stories emerge as I'm making. So one of the tasks for me, I think, in this book was the idea that suddenly came to me partway through making. I had been going to use only stamps, of using these panels that we created in a previous episode. And then I wasn't quite sure how things like the Tim Holtz paper dolls and Photobooth photos and so on would combine with characters who were stamped. But as you'll see, by using a particular colour palette and by tinting those stamps with complementary colours, and by using recurring motifs, particularly in the form of ephemera, I think I've ended up with something that is a rather beautiful, cohesive, harmonious whole. So here's our cover. My stamps in the form of the winter grasses, a little bit of my tissue paper here, and of course the ephemera. And this word memories, rather than being one of the large words from my stamp sets, is from the France Papillon set. And it just seemed like the perfect word for a book which has characters from different periods of history, in different styles, hand-stitched as you see there, and we'll come to the back cover shortly. So yeah, the boy here looking forward from where he is, but maybe somebody looking back over their memories of times past and times changing. Let's take a look inside. So on this first spread, as you can see, there is one of the panels we created the other day, but if you look closely, you'll notice that I have shifted things around in order to embed these panels into the pages. Sometimes I've adjusted where things are sitting, and I've allowed things to overlap from the background stamping. But the story of this page, through those springtime botanicals, has a rather buttoned up, maybe 19th century, possibly early 20th century gentleman looking across looking forward in time to this fabulous go-getting woman walking the streets of New York on her way to work, full of business-like efficiency, but enjoying the sunshine, the shorter skirts. So he's clearly from an earlier era, also concerned in business, and suddenly discovering that there is a whole new element in the workforce. Be your beautiful self, do what you love, that a woman can also take her place in the world. I've decided it's New York, that's one of France's postmarks. I've decided this street is an American street, and that he's finding that he's slightly envious of her freedom and her go-gettingness. He's wishing he could have been less buttoned up in his life, and finding that actually the workplace can be a better place for everybody when the tasks are shared and people with different skill sets and different abilities can all join in. And of course, those botanicals are a sign of fresh growth, burgeoning fertility of the human mind, and enterprise. So yeah, the combination of stamps, ephemera, the colour tones, all bringing this together, along with little vintage book page fragments and collaging. So yeah, the stamping of the images and the tinting of the images is all covered in the blog post, as I mentioned. Let's turn the page and find out what other storybook characters are in these pages. So now we find ourselves again in a journey through the ages. So this gentleman in the past was in charge of the Studio Emmanuel Ferrer, and his whole being and ethos was all about controlling and making sure everything was perfect every day. We come forward a couple of generations. It's all perspective, and it's a much freer form, open workplace. Generosity, friendliness, quirks and jokes. So looking back to those days of 1887 where everything had to be exactly so, and now finding a slightly different way to run that photographic studio and let there be a little more expressiveness. And again, those leaves in the background are just showing that way that life can burgeon forth if you just allow a little bit of latitude. Give people a little bit of space to play, and you'll be amazed what they can come up with. So this chap, obviously a traveller, obviously out to explore the world. So stamps from France Papillon's set, also that determination to head out into nature and explore. Take your journeys. The journey is the destination. Creativity takes courage. That is the way to build a life, is with courage and daring. For this gentleman, this very dapper gentleman, and as he goes, I think probably making a study of botanics, flora and fauna. There are the butterflies here from the insect world, but his studies are taking him around the world, and again those globes just tinted so that they echo the round ephemera on the page, these beautiful diagrammatic shapes that just have real energy in the page, matching the energy of the young chap setting out into the world with all his travel tickets and entry book tickets and ways to measure his mileage as he goes. I wish him well on his journey. So yeah, I've got some ephemera sticking out here, which makes it lovely turning the pages. So this was an interesting page. As you can see, there's always a balancing act between a photographic image and an illustrated image, and somehow finding the way that they speak to one another or echo one another's themes. So a couple of weeks ago when I was making this panel and this $1,000 in cash came up, and I combined that in my head with the corsage she's wearing and sort of thought, oh, she's getting married and there's $1,000 of wedding presents coming her way. I since think maybe it's a prize she's won, that something shifted as soon as she started to have a relationship with the working maid over here, that this was a lucky windfall that she's experienced, and she's out on the town buying flowers to wear in her corsage, enjoying the spring sunshine with that moment of luck that has freed her up. And over here, the wandering point started with, what is it that she's looking at so intently? What is the thing she's holding? And I decided that what it is a letter informing her that she has a place to come and study, even if it's only secretarial skills or whatever it might be, but education, the school. This is a school badge from one of my stamp sets for the Vienna School for Girls that my grandfather's cousin attended. So all of the information here is sort of talking about education and schooling, and a chance, therefore, the promise of a different kind of life. With brave wings she flies, that her luck is going to be in having this opportunity, this chance to really change her life, going out of service and into developing her own skill sets in new directions. Don't get me wrong, housekeeping, housework, that's a skill set, one I don't have in abundance myself. But yeah, so the combination of these two started to tell me a different story about luck and opportunity, and those moments in life when something happens and you have to seize the chance to change things up. So I couldn't resist having this chap again. I just think he's such a character. So the dedication, the rigour of these pointing fingers and what it is he wants from people. So before, it was rather a restrictive, constricting rigour. Now on this page, he became more of a representation of those school teachers who really hold you to it. So there are school teachers who can very generously open out your world and support you, and there are others who work from a place of real rigor and discipline, but that can also be something that can release you and help you to grow. So I decided that somewhere back in her past there was a school teacher who gave her such a strong support structure in terms of discipline in her subject, rigor and learning, that she can now, with a calm air, head out into the world and pick any profession, any place to go, to love what she does, and to make the most of every single moment, because your forever is composed of the right now. So walking Main Street, finding jobs, posting off letters, applying for jobs here, there and everywhere. She's got things in pounds, in dollars, but that was all triggered by somebody who allowed her to explore the comedy, the history and the tragedy of life, by introducing her to books, by showing her that education could be a way to a life that gives you something of value. And again, those leafy energies just filled with growth, and yeah, a very deliberate kind of, if you were drawing this as a graph, her path, her trajectory is all upwards. Yeah, it was inevitable with the horses over here and that spring apple blossom combined, the railings. This chap from the panel immediately became something to do with horse races and luck, and that was to do with what was also going on in the other pages. The impossible is often the untried, that he is, yeah, training horses in a new way, I think, and also just learning how to make money. He may be gambling, but he's doing it from a position of knowledge. He is working with his horses. He is studying the market, studying the other horses, studying training patterns and breeding patterns, and building a whole new level of knowledge about this sport that he deeply loves. There was just something about his energy in that flat cap. I could just see him leaning on the railings at a race course. He's leaning on a bit of spattered inky paper, but yeah, I just thought he's the perfect panel to go opposite these horses, full of the joys of spring, full of freshness and speed and life, and nothing ventured, nothing gained. You just haven't tried it yet if you think it's impossible. Give it a go. You never know where it's going to take you. I love this chap. He was maybe my favourite of the panels. I'm not sure, but you can see again I've shifted where the word labels are to embed him into the page, and again it's these round ephemera that kind of echo the globes and compasses going on in what is, again, clearly a young man who wants to head out into the world, go exploring, hold on tight to your dreams of travel, trust your crazy ideas, whatever they may be, and everything is possible. So again, he's marking his journey, his trajectory, his itinerary, his longitude and latitude. And yeah, all the labels and tickets and journey tickets are part of him setting off. And he is also taking with him some music in the form of his memories of growing up near an old piano studio. So that's in there. Even with that this spread also has music within it, that rhythm of repetition and variation of the elements and the motifs and the imagery and the stories is also connected to music and poetry, and how those have informed my journey through life. Education, learning, book reading, discovery, the journeys that can take you on, and then of course everywhere, nature and her inspiration. So on the final page, a little warning about the dangers of getting too stuck with your head in a book, that you might miss the beauties that nature also has to offer us. Yes, of course, live, create, tell the story, but sometimes that's not about other people's stories. That's about listening out to what nature has to tell us, looking up from the pages of your book to live in the real world as well. Books can tell you a certain amount. Books can help you find out where you've come from. But if you want to know where you're going, maybe look up and out from having your nose in a book every once in a while and live, create and tell your own story. So I hope you've enjoyed that little glimpse into the pages of this book. I love how the colours travel from page to page. I love how those echoing circular motifs take us on a journey through. I love how those themes even started to echo themselves. New opportunities, taking advantage of those chances in life, making sure you're ready with knowledge and skills so that you can make the most of those chances that come up. So as I said, remember there are links in the description below so that you can find your way to the how-to post over on the blog, the previous episode where we created these collaged panels, and of course the rest of the books playlist, which I hope you'll enjoy exploring if you haven't already. Thank you so much for your company today, and happy crafting all.